Am I the a-hole for finally saying no, even though it changed everything? Well, is this a story of a people pleaser? Because it kind of sounds that way. Let's jump into it.
The Bearded Take with Ethan X.
So I, 29 female, have always been the reliable one in my family. You know the type. The one people call when something goes wrong. The one who just handles things. The one who doesn't make it harder for anyone else. And for the longest time, I didn't mind. If my parents needed help, sure. If my siblings needed something, of course. If plans changed last minute, fine. I'll adjust. It just became my role. The problem is, no one ever asked if I was okay with it. It was just expected. Over time, it started getting heavier. It wasn't just favors anymore. It was responsibility. Watching my sister's kids just for a few hours, which turned into entire weekends. Helping my parents with bills just this once, which somehow became a regular thing. Dropping everything because you're the only one we can count on. And yeah, I kept saying yes, because every time I even hesitated, I'd get hit with, "We thought you'd understand," or "We don't have anyone else. You've always been there for us." So I kept showing up. Even when it started costing me. I missed plans, turned down opportunities, put my own stuff on hold. And the worst part? No one seemed to notice, or maybe they did and just didn't care. The breaking point happened last week. I had something important, like actually important, a presentation at work I've been preparing for months. The night before, my sister called. She said she needed me to watch her kids again, and I told her I couldn't. Explained why, told her this was a big deal for me, and she said, "So what am I supposed to do?" And for the first time, I didn't try to solve it. I just said, "I don't know." Silence. And then, "Wow, okay," and she hung up. The next day, I did my presentation. It went great, like really great, and I couldn't even enjoy it because my phone was blowing up. Text from my mom, my sister, even my brother, all saying some version of, "You really let her down, and that wasn't like you, she needed you." And that's when it hit me. It's not that they couldn't figure something else out, it's that they didn't want to, because I've always made it easier not to. Since then, things have been different, quieter, more distant. My sister hasn't spoken to me. My mom is being short with me, and my brother told me that I've changed. And maybe I have, because for the first time, I didn't bend. But now it feels like everything's shifted. Like my place in the family was tied to what I was willing to give, not who I actually am. My mom told me yesterday, "We just don't recognize you lately." And I didn't know what to say because part of me feels guilty, like I let them down. But another part of me feels like this is the first time I didn't let myself down. So am I the a-hole for finally saying no, even if it changed everything? Well, I think I hit the nail on the head with the people pleaser piece, and call me crazy, but it sounds like we've been spending a little too much time just being absolutely available at all times for people who maybe don't even deserve it or properly appreciate it because we've gotten to a point where we just expect it. Because God forbid, we finally have something really important going on for ourselves and we can't just drop what we're doing like it's nothing. It's very interesting, too, how things have gone super quiet ever since this whole thing blew up. You mean to tell me that we have nothing to talk about with the OP when we don't want them to do something for us? But before we judge too harshly, let's read this update. After I said no and did my presentation, things were tense for about a week. My sister barely spoke to me. My mom kept making little passive-aggressive comments like we just have to adjust to the new you, and I almost caved. Almost apologized, almost went back to smoothing everything over. But then something happened that changed everything. My sister called me again, another emergency. Her babysitter canceled last minute. She said she had no one else and she really needed me. And this time, she didn't even ask. She said, "I'll drop them off in 30 minutes, like it was already decided. And something in me clicked. Not anger, not guilt, clarity. And I said, "No, if you drop them off here, I will not open the door." Dead calm. She laughed at first like I was joking, but I wasn't. And she said, "You wouldn't do that." And I said, "Try me." So she didn't show up. But she did send a long message about how I've changed and how she misses the old me. And that's when I finally said something I should have said years ago. I told her, I'm not the old me. I'm the version of me who stopped sacrificing my life so you don't have to plan yours. Silence for hours. Then my mom called, and instead of backing down, I did something I've never done before, and I told her the truth. I told her how often I've rearranged my schedule, how much money I've quietly given them, how many opportunities I passed on, and how exhausted I've been. And I said, you're not upset because I failed you. You're upset because I stopped being convenient. And there was a long pause. And for once, she didn't argue. She said, I didn't realize it felt that way. And I said, that's the problem. Since then, everything shifted. My sister found another babysitter, a paid one. Turns out she had options. She just didn't want to spend the money. My mom stopped calling me for every little thing. And when she does ask for help now, she actually asks. And here's the part I didn't expect. My brother texted me privately and said, honestly, I'm glad you did it. I've been wanting to say no for years. That one hit differently because suddenly I wasn't the villain. I was just the first one who stopped playing the role. And yeah, things are different. Less automatic closeness, less expectation, more space. But for the first time in my life, that space feels peaceful. And I finally understand something. Saying no didn't destroy my family. It just forced them to grow up. And honestly, I've never felt prouder of myself. Well, that was an interesting conversation she had with her brother. Kind of sounds like the two of them were sort of the pushovers of the family, you know, the people pleasers. And because he was like, you know, it's about time. Now I need to do the same thing, basically. And, you know, he's right, because when people rely on them, I don't know what it is about people pleasers. And I mean, I've kind of been in that spot before where you just like continue saying yes until you finally get to the point where when you say no, it's so shocking because you kind of come off sounding like an a-hole because you're actually standing up for yourself. You get to the point where you're like, enough is enough. And somehow the people who have constantly been relying on you nonstop don't actually realize the impact that they've had on your life until you blow up on them. Because whether you just like didn't express the inconvenience before or you weren't clear enough, like suddenly it's like something switches in you and it's like suddenly you're not a nice person anymore, right? Because you're not so willing to help. Obviously, that's not really the case, but you know, you have to set those boundaries, right? But that's what happens. I'm just glad that the OP had a real conversation with the people who she impacted, because you have to set boundaries with people. Because if you don't, one of two things is going to happen. You're going to have these people who feel like they can rely on you for anything and everything whenever they feel like it, and then they feel entitled to it. And, you know, sometimes they might not realize that they're actually being a-holes in the situation because you're just like so happy to say yes all the time about certain things. And then other times people take advantage of it, but it gets to a point where you're allowing it to happen. So whether you like it or not, you've kind of created the situation yourself, and then you have to get out of it by looking like an a-hole for a little while. But in this case, honestly, it didn't even really come off that way. You literally just, from the get-go, you were like, I have something going on. Like, I cannot help you. You know, it's like, sorry, not sorry, but like I have my own life too. And I don't even think the attitude was that strong. Obviously, it's hard to tell sometimes when you read these stories to really get the tone of what they were like when they approached the situation, but I don't get the sense that they were being an a-hole about it until the second part where it's like they had to almost be an a-hole to get their point across. So, the all-important question, was she the a-hole for finally saying no, even though it changed everything? Well, obviously, I think we know that my thought is going to be no, because even though we might have come off like an a-hole at one point or another, you're not an a-hole for standing up for yourself and finally setting boundaries that you should have set a long time ago. I don't know what it is that causes people to become people pleasers in the first place, but I've definitely been in that spot before. So, you know, I'm not holding it against you for finally having to reach that point where you had to draw a line in the sand because you just wouldn't say no to people for a reason that you probably didn't even know. And you're only 29, so maybe something finally clicked where you're like, I need to prioritize things that are important to me as well. And especially in the case of a work presentation, if we're talking about something that is going to help advance your career, then obviously you need to prioritize things like that. But also, it's your freaking life. So you need to prioritize yourself anyway and not let your family and friends step all over you and basically treat you like their personal assistant or on-call babysitter. So that's my take. Definitely not the a-hole. For the listeners, let me know in the comments, what's your take? Thanks for tuning in.